But, someone's running around calling us the parasite class. And I, as a Texan who has worked since I was 13, when I was 13, I learned how to shingle wood shingles onto a roof in South Dakota in the summer after a major storm because that's what my family did. They traveled for roofing. Give me whatever you want to think of me for that. But going on, I took jobs at my cousin's law firm and I collated papers, anything I could just to get my hands on a little bit of extra cash because my allowance was $10. I mean, it was big time. Let's be real. This was like the late 90s. I needed more than $10 a week to exist, right? So I did every job I could. When I hit 16, I was obsessed. I wanted to get a job at Best Buy. I wanted to get a job at Best Buy so bad that I called and I did the phone interview thing. I got denied, and then I asked. I went to the store and I asked people. I studied and I called 30 days later and I passed and I got an interview and I got a second interview and she told me I was hired at the end of it and I was making $7.50 an hour when minimum wage was $7.15. I was so happy. I loved that job. At Best Buy is like the perfect job for a person with ADHD, or it was at the time, because they had different departments, and so I was moving departments all the time. I got promoted like crazy. I went from goddamn media to operations to security to appliances. I sold appliances and did a damn good job at it too. Computers, home video. At one store I was sent to, I was a floater. I got to do the grand opening of the Denton store in Texas because I was like one of the top employees. Loved it. But eventually I had done every job that you could do in the store except be like store management. And let's be real, I wasn't going to their like training program and all of that. So I was at Best Buy for 5 years, did all the jobs, got bored, started job hopping. 2 years per place, pretty much. Never intended to, but that's just how it worked out. I would get a job paid more than the last job I had. I would get it down. I would do wonderful. And then eventually I would get bored out of my skull. Like with ADHD, which I didn't know I had at the time, it becomes like a physically painful boredom. If you have been there, you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, moving on. I was never out of work. I went from job to job to job, and then went to go work for the Fort Worth Weekly, the alternative weekly newspaper in Fort Worth. I loved that job. Oh my God, I got to know about all the shows that were happening and all the bands that were coming out and with new stuff. And oh my God, it's just the greatest. And 6 months into selling classified ads, I was running the department. Oh, I love that job. 2 years hit, and it wasn't boredom. It actually wasn't boredom. I had to go deal with some family stuff. I ended up working for the state of Texas by way of a state university in the human resources department of all places, because look at me, I've got human resources just like written on this big ass forehead, right? It wasn't like a real, HR position, although I did have to take all the tests, the certification and things like that. And I know a lot more about human resources law in Texas than I ever wish I did. But anyway, it was really just a program where I was helping them to digitize all of their files. So I was in a room by myself all day and letting papers scan through the. It wasn't really boring because I was music blasting. I was listening to Howard Stern every day. I was listening to Russ Martin every afternoon. I was fine. I was dandy. Everything was good. Rick Perry, that pants. I decided not to take some sort of like stimulus package from the Obama administration to the states. He rejected large portions of it, and a big part of it was the funding for, guess what, digitization. So yeah, I was getting laid off by the government before it was even cool. Fair, my department was doing everything they could to try and find me funding from some other position. They thought about putting me in one of the medical bio research lab thingies on their payroll, but eventually I just got so tired of it with the whole thing that I was supposed to pull my hair out. So yeah, I hit that whole burnout thing. Yeah. Ended up homeless. Went through an ordeal that I'm not gonna get into on here, but suffice to say, ended up with a lot of PTSD from it. Got out. Ended up in New York. In a house by the lake. It was so awesome. Got sick one day. When I say I got sick, I mean I stood up from the couch and I fell to the floor. Like my legs weren't supporting me. Got in to see the doctor, found out I had no blood, like literally no blood. My hemoglobin was 1.7. This was the first of many blood transfusions. In fact, I don't think I have any of my own blood left in my body at all, if I'm being real honest. Docs couldn't figure out why I kept showing up with no blood in my body. They couldn't understand it. They had no idea what was going on. Just knew I was weak. I couldn't do anything. I was the color of a Simpsons character. If I still have that picture, I'll put it up here. And this went on for years. Me ending up with no blood, them telling me I had to get transfusions, me getting transfusions, and then finally, found a doctor who was able to tell me that I was suffering from what Mary Todd Lincoln had, pernicious anemia. Pretty rare, idiopathic. They still could not tell me why it was happening. They could just tell me how to live with the symptoms. At some point along the way, I get sent for an MRI. Find a lot of, several dark spots in the back of my brain, and they start to think that maybe that's why I can't seem to think the way I used to. I'm having a hard time with words. Like, I'm stumbling a lot. I'm stuttering a lot. I say words that mean similar things, but just not quite the right thing. I forgot to mention that when my legs stopped working, so did my hands and fingers. It was like never the biggest deal because the bigger part was keeping me alive. Like, I was in and out of ICU. I was transfusion girl, it was my fucking superpower. When I got an answer on how to keep myself alive, I finally got referred to a neurologist. And those dark spots, the trouble with making my fingers sing, the trouble with making my legs work, the trouble with all of the things I was having, girl had some brain damage. Whole side hustle I developed along the way years ago when I was no longer working for the state. It was freelance writing. I was doing ad copy and copywriting, stuff like that. Things that you really need word recall for, and also your fingers. So the neuros doesn't really have any good news. Physical therapy is really helpful with your legs and with your fingers. Started going to physical therapy, and they tell you it's supposed to hurt, and you just like push through it. I would end up pushing through it and hurting myself again. I actually ended up really screwing up my ankle along the way. Doing this more like home physical therapy thing. Did all of the exercises. Got myself like resistance bands and all this stuff. Working real hard to get my legs working, and I finally got out of the wheelchair and I was on a walker. Well, I could not seem to get past that point. Rehab, and I figure out that coloring is actually really good for making my fingers, like trying to help them learn again. I started with like literally kids coloring books and big ass markers, and kind of evolved to now I use Sharpie fine points, and I still have a problem with staying in the lines, I'm not gonna lie, but I'm getting better, and they're getting more mobile, and they're doing their thing. Again, was on a walker in New York. Down here, was on a walker still. Evolved to a cane, and realized one day that I could kind of walk without the cane. Still keep it like really close to me because I have a lot of knee issues, a lot of feet issues, So when you're literally sat there doing nothing for years because you had no blood in your body and no energy, muscles kind of atrophy. So still got some lingering leftovers from that, right? Everything I do in a day is in one way or another focused on making my body work right again. My brain may never, but can try for my body. But God, it's hard. Last night I lost my health insurance. I'd love to say I got myself this far, but I have a team of doctors that have kept me alive, have kept me walking. When they do that reflex tap thingy, I don't have reflexes on my legs anymore. So one of my doctors told me, I don't really understand how you walk. Given that every single thing I do, all of my hobbies are really just about making my body work better, I'll still be okay. I will find a way to exist without my regular checkups to make sure my body is still bodying. That's fine. There are a lot of people who aren't going to be okay. A lot of people that last night was a death sentence for them. Told us, I remember some Republican politician along the way, he said something about after meeting with Elon that we know the cuts we can make. We just have to have the stomach to, and then he would like trail off. He wouldn't finish the sentence. Never finished that sentence. But we know. Especially after last night. We know. Thankfully, Curtis Yarvin, in his software engineer omniscient greatness, has said that our society isn't ready for the parasite class to be turned into biofuel. Not just yet. That doesn't take away the whole death as an option.